Hi, I'm Cynthia Crofoot, and if you are watching this, then you've just finished viewing the film You Resemble Me, and I am going to be questioning the director, writer, producer, and actress, Dina Amer. Welcome, Dina.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you guys.
Well, it was an honor to watch your film. I have to tell you, I didn't know what to expect from it, and I loved it. I loved the message that you gave. I love how you portrayed the message, how you made it relatable to a wide audience. I did want to ask you, how did you come up with that story concept? Was that a story that was always kind of burning within you that you had to tell, or was there a specific event that happened?
You know, I was actually at the scene of the raid. And I was there in Saint Denis, which is a neighborhood outside of Paris, hours after that explosion had gone off, when the police were closing in on the mastermind of the attacks and on Hasna, who was the girlfriend and the cousin of that mastermind. And so I was there, and I actually reported for Vice News as an on-air correspondent that Hasna was the first female suicide bomber, which turned out to be fake news, but every single news network had confirmed that. And so I felt so guilty afterwards. I contributed to fake news, and I went to go find her real mother, and I honestly didn't even know which apartment it was in the building, but I knocked on my lucky number, and a man opened the door, and I was like, oh, it's not going to be the right place. And he's like, wait, there's something familiar about you. Where are you from? And I was like, I'm from Egypt. He's like, why didn't you say that? So am I. Who are you looking for in this building? I'm like, for Hasna's mom. And he's like, well, that's my girlfriend. Wait, let me go get her.
Oh,
and
wow.
then Hasna's mom came to the door, and she kept me there for around 20 minutes. And she had turned away every single, journalist or filmmaker who was interested in speaking to her. But she let me in because she told me that I resembled her daughter.
Oh, wow. That gave me goosebumps.
And she had abandoned her daughter, so there was a sense of catharsis in allowing me into her home, and shortly after, she showed me a picture of Hasna as a child. And I saw myself in that little girl, and I was so struck by what is the journey from that young girl who looks like me to this woman who is called a monster and vilified and called the first female suicide bomber in Europe. Like, what is that journey? And from there, I actually went to the morgue. I saw Hasna's body. I met Hasna's sister, Miriam. And I realized there was a story that needed to be told when I went home with the mother after the morgue. And the brother, Hasna's brother, Yusuf, said, if you want to know why my sister died in such tragic circumstances, it's this woman's fault. And he pointed at the mother. And the mother said, hey, all parents beat their kids, no? And at least I wasn't like my sister, the mother of, Abaoud, Hassan's cousin. She used to beat her kids so violently that they couldn't go to school because the bruises would show. And you guys don't even know what a real beating is. You should have seen what my father did to me. And from that moment, I was like, wow, this is not a film about terrorism. This is a film about intergenerational trauma, the cycles of violence that we inherit. And it's about a dysfunctional family and a woman who really felt abandoned, not only by her family, but by the state, and who was desperately seeking a sense of security in who she was, and looking for love and home and direction. So for me, I'm like, this is a universal story, and I'm able to deconstruct a new story that feels like, it's like the boogeyman, the scary terrorist, and the woman who's wearing the niqab, and into a very universal story about a shattered sense of self and a woman who needs to find her place in this world.
That came across very clearly to me, and I liked that it was relatable to a wider audience, right? And you didn't make the focus of the film the end of the film. I mean, you told the story of this could be anybody, and these are the challenges that she was up against, and she continued to try and find and do the right thing, which I liked. Like, and she kept having doors slammed on her, and it was almost like it was a funnel that she was put through, where she ended up where she was. So I did want to ask you, is this the first film that you've written and directed and produced
And acted in.
and acted in? I'm going to keep going on and on.
Yeah. It's my first baby, you know, and I call myself a recovering journalist. I used to work, you know, for the New York Times, for CNN, for PBS. I really was attracted to storytelling from a young age, and to telling real stories. And shortly after really getting in the mix of journalism, I felt like this wasn't the right way for me to tell stories, because in the pursuit of being objective and fact-based, there was a lot of desensitizing of like the humanity of people, and just the gray, the messy complexity of being a human being, and that's actually, and the poetry, right, and of each person's humanity, you know, and so I felt very kind of like, I felt like, honestly, filmmaking became my medium to tell real stories in a way where I actually was able to use my sensitivity fully, you know, as opposed to shield it. So I could be more professional, you know, and I this, but still, you know, my journalism, I think, equipped me to write this film and to tell this, and you know, to tell this story really authentically, because when the script is written, from over 360 hours of interviews I spent over 6 years deeply entrenched with the family and the community, and like, I understood this is a true story, and it's like kind of like the holy grail, because people died, and because people died, we need to tell this story and talk about it in a nuanced, complex way. And because people died, I have to put in the time and the energy and the respect to really get the story right. And because people died, we need to understand the people who are kind of fall into the same cracks and traps of being radicalized into violent groups, you know? Like, this film was by no means a way for me to create sympathy around Hasna or around people who join these groups, but it was because we care about the safety of our communities. Even if you have no compassion in your heart for someone like Hasna, for a purely national security purpose, we need to look deeper at these individuals. We need to look at the root cause, the root of their stories, and understand what led them to feel like they want to opt out of society and find salvation in a violent group.
I liked that you brought that home in the story, and for your first baby, it's quite the baby. I'll give you that, right? Like, it is, you did it very well, and to learn that it was one of the first things that you wrote and directed, like the execution was really, really well done.
Thank you.
So I did want to ask, I noticed, so in the film, men are the lesser, right? It's a female driven film. It's a female film. And I found that two things I wanted to talk to you about how it came about is, did you purposely have, because the only kind of male figure in the film that could have been deemed as someone who was positive towards her was her stepdad, right? If I saw it, because all the other men in her life didn't support and encourage her, right? And then at the end, the one person she thought who was going to help get her what she wanted betrayed her, basically, right? And in relation to that, I felt that the way you filmed it, it had a gritty feel to it. Were those things that you consciously decided on, or did it happen organically?
I think I had such a strong sense of Hasna and her life and the essence of who she is. I could really feel her, you know? And so that really informed every single choice in the film. And I wanted, like, I fought for this film to be a fiction, and not
Yeah.
just a documentary, because I wanted you to be in her shoes and her
Yeah.
skin and to feel how she was shape-shifting after her sister. The only real kind of like rooted love that she ever experienced in her life was like torn away from her. And
Yeah.
I wanted you to feel that, like, that how real even the fiction was crafted, because this is a true story, and this is really this, she really lived. And I want that gut punch in the end of the documentary for you to really leave the cinema understanding, like, we are all complicit, and that,
Yeah.
and that, and I think even, for me, it became clear that, like, there is no formula for radicalization. Every time we try to peg it to lack of education or unemployment issues or a broken family, you find someone who didn't struggle with any of that and still radicalized. But there's one common denominator amongst all people who join these kinds of like radicalized groups, which is like, it's a shattered sense of self.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I really wanted the audience to experience that as like the main flaw that she was struggling with, and that hence the fact that she was shape-shifting and struggling, like becoming different, that she wanted to become someone else, and her radicalizing was her effort to become a good girl, a person who was so-called like integrated, her best self, but sadly she couldn't escape her demons, and she had fallen into, she was a pawn in a much bigger political game. But even the structure of the film has this schizophrenia to it, and so in the beginning, her childhood, they're on the streets, and it's fraught, but they have each other, and you're really, the camera is really kind of whipping into the action of their lives, and you feel their togetherness, how they hold hands, how their bodies are entangled with each other. And once they're kind of ripped apart, you see Hasna fracture, and you really struggle with, well, who is she really, and why is she shifting? And that was that was so intentional, to feel like something had, as an adult, already been broken in who she was, and then the final chapter of it, we kind of, after that explosion, we blast into the gritty, brutal truth, of the the news cycle and what is left, the remnants of her family.
Yeah, that all, I liked the duality. You played a lot against her struggle versus the setup of the film. The beauty of the love within an environment that wasn't beautiful was carried through the whole film. I think her inner beauty, as she struggled to find who she was, in contrast to the barriers that she kept coming up against. I really liked all of that. And I think one of the most poignant moments for me was at the end, when she was screaming, saying that I love you and we could have kids, we could go away. Like, she never lost that hope. And I think that was who she was through the whole film, is she just kept hoping, and she never lost that. And then to have all of it blamed on her as being the first suicide bomber, I felt like, oh my God, but is that what happened? And I liked that moment, because you didn't answer my question until after. And then it was like, oh, okay, I see. And I liked that. And I liked the message that you were trying to share with people through film and through a story where we can relate to that. So I think you executed that really, really well. And I enjoyed the film a lot. I even felt, like you said, her struggling with her identity. There were times through the film I even felt that from one scene to a next, I remember seeing her inside a building and then outside, and I went, is that even the same actor? Because it was like she had shifted and changed just a little bit, but enough for me to go, is it a different actor who's come in to play this? Like, I loved that feeling through the film, that I felt like she was changing, and I could see it in different situations.
Thank you. It's also the fact that, like, this is a woman whose humanity we never dare to look into, right, as a society, because we're ashamed of her. And yet her grievances or needs are quite universal, and she's every woman in a way, you know what I mean? And so I really wanted us to be able to experience her in that way. But also, she remains a mystery. no matter how much time I spent, over 6 years to make this film, and I really I can feel this woman. I feel like I know her, I still never looked into her eyes, and I never met her. And there's an element that will always be unknown to us.
So as an actor, let me go there then. As the actress portraying a real person, did you feel a weight on you as a writer and director for sure, but as the actor, I can imagine that portraying someone and wanting to do them justice for a story that you're telling, was there an added pressure for you to be this person, or did you find that naturally after all of the interviews and everything?
I think I felt very close to Hasna after all that time I'd spent with the family, and the family, as I said, only let me in because they felt there was a resemblance. And to the extent that, when I was filming the documentary material with her mother, sometimes the mom would be like, she would call me Hasna, on camera. She'd be like, "Oh, Hasna, are we going to go to Morocco this summer together?" I'd be like, "Wait, no, I'm Dina. I'm not Hasna," Or even Mariam would be like, "You're just like my sister." It's like, you laugh the same way, you walk the same way. And so I did feel this uncanny resemblance to her. And I also, when I understood Hasna's core wounds, and her fragility in them, I really felt myself in them, in her. And I really almost felt like when she was on that balcony screaming for dear life before that explosion went off, in some way, like the resonance of that, of that fear kind of traveled to me somehow. And
you had a spiritual connection with her.
Yeah, because it's like, what in the world would connect me to this woman? I live in New York City. I was living in New York City. I'm not French. You know what I mean? Like, but yet there is this recognition of a resemblance between us that is under the surface, And so I feel like I was really tasked to tell her story, in many ways.
It's obvious that there was some kind of a spiritual connection there between the two of you that went beyond just looks or whatever. So let me ask you one last thing then. The message in the film is self-evident. Is that the message that you want people to take away from this? Is that, I know you mentioned it a couple times, that we're seen as monsters. I don't personally view anybody that way, but is that the message that you want people to walk away with, is that we're all just people, and this could have been anybody, right? It's not about your ethnicity or any of that, right? It was something deeper within her that was missing. It was her struggle that led her to that vulnerability, right?
Absolutely, what you just said. And also I would add to that I think we all have a person or a group that we like point a finger to, and we say, well, they're bad. They're just simply like not good people. And we reserve judgment for them. And there's anger and maybe even hatred, someone who hurts you, someone who you feel is just, is beyond any kind of empathy. And I feel like there's this quote that's always like, been with me, which is like, if you knew everyone's story, you'd fall in love with them, and it's like, it's a very hard way to live with hatred or anger, or strong judgment in your heart. And I feel like I wanted this film to soften people's hearts, to allow them to not carry that weight of kind of like righteous anger towards another person, another group, and to be like, or even towards themselves, and to be like, you know what, like, it's more complicated. And that person, whether it's me, another person, or a group, in a way, they're trying their best. That doesn't mean let them off the hook of accountability. Absolutely. But it does allow us to have some space to just be human and to understand that everyone has a story, So
Well, thank you so much for that. I know that you have a session that you have to get to, so I'm gonna Thank you, Dina, for joining
Thank
us and for
you.
taking the
I'm
time
very
to answer
grateful.
these questions.
Thank you.
Like I said, I really enjoyed your film, and I loved the message that it put out there into the world. And I hope that it's a message that a lot of people embrace in their hearts. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I appreciate you guys very much and your big hearts. And I appreciate the audience very, very much for watching this film. And yeah, I hope it leaves people with something that is blessed, you know? So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.